The day everything changed started like any other Tuesday at the Global Space Communication Center. Jay Park sat at his desk, sipping lukewarm coffee and staring at rows of computer screens that usually showed nothing more exciting than background radiation and occasional satellite data. He had worked here for 7 years, and most days felt like an endless loop of waiting and watching. That morning was different. At exactly 7:42 a.m., the main communication array began to pulse with a signal unlike anything humanity had ever received before. The patterns were too complex to be random, too structured to be natural. Jay's fingers flew across the keyboard, his muscles moving almost before his brain could process what was happening. "Director Rodriguez," he shouted, his voice cracking with excitement. "We're receiving something." The center erupted into controlled chaos. Scientists and technicians who had spent decades listening to the silent vastness of space suddenly found themselves face to face with proof that they were not alone. The signal resolved into a holographic image. It wasn't a person, exactly. The being looked like a collection of shifting blue and silver tendrils, with what might have been eyes, or something resembling eyes, floating within its translucent form. When it spoke, the words appeared simultaneously in every language known to humanity, projected directly into the minds of those watching. "Greetings, inhabitants of Earth," the being said. Its voice sounded like wind passing through crystal tubes. "We are the Lumina, representatives of the Galactic Confederation. After careful observation, we find your species ready to participate in the interstellar competitive games." Jay Park blinked. Competitive games. It sounded more like an intergalactic reality show than a serious diplomatic communication. The holographic being continued. "You have demonstrated remarkable potential. Your technological development, while primitive by our standards, shows unique problem-solving capabilities. Your species adapts. Your species takes risks. These are qualities we value." Director Maria Rodriguez stepped forward. She was a veteran of international diplomacy, having negotiated complex space treaties and handled delicate international conflicts. But this was different. This was not about nations. This was about humanity as a whole. "What exactly are these competitive games?" she asked, her voice steady. The luminous form rippled, which might have been their version of a smile. "A series of challenges that test the physical, mental, and strategic capabilities of spacefaring civilizations. Competitions that have continued for thousands of your Earth years. Competitions that determine galactic standing, technological exchange rights, and diplomatic relationships." Around the room, the assembled scientists and officials exchanged looks. Some appeared excited. Others looked nervous. A few seemed like they were trying to decide if this was an elaborate joke. Jay Park realized he was holding his breath. The holographic being, the Lumina representative, projected additional images. They showed complex obstacle courses that seemed to defy gravity. They displayed mental challenges that looked like impossible puzzles. They revealed combat scenarios that seemed to blend strategy, physical skill, and something that looked almost like interpretive dance. "Your invitation is formal," the Lumina announced. "Will humanity accept?" The room fell silent. Every person knew this moment would change everything. This was more than a competition. This was humanity's first real chance to show the galaxy who they were. Director Rodriguez stepped forward. She looked at the hologram and spoke 3 words that would echo through human history. "We accept." Absolutely. The luminous form pulsed with what might have been approval or amusement. With alien beings, it was hard to tell the difference. Jay Park felt a smile spreading across his face. Whatever was coming, humanity was going to be ready. The rulebook arrived 2 weeks after first contact. It wasn't a digital file or a simple document. Instead, a massive crystal-like cube materialized in the center of the Global Space Communication Center, slowly unfolding itself like a 3-dimensional puzzle box that seemed to breathe with an inner light. Soo Kim stared at the cube, As the world's leading expert in international law and complex regulatory systems, she had been called in to decode what looked like the most complicated instruction manual in human history. "This is going to be interesting," she muttered. The cube began to project holographic text in multiple dimensions. Words shifted and changed. Rules seemed to have rules about their own rules. What looked like a simple instruction in one moment would transform into a complex web of exceptions and subclauses in the next. Most people would have been overwhelmed. Sue Kim was excited. She worked around the clock, surrounded by massive screens and enough coffee to fill an ocean. Teams of linguists, mathematicians, and legal experts watched her work, trying to understand how she made sense of the seemingly impossible document. "Look at this," she said to Ja Park, who had become her primary liaison. She pointed at a section that seemed to change color based on how you looked at it. "This rule about combat engagement appears to have 17 different interpretations, depending on the gravitational pull of the competition location." Jay scratched his head. "Is that even possible?" Sue smiled. "It is now." The Galactic Games rulebook was nothing like any competition humans had ever seen. It wasn't just a set of instructions. It was a living document that seemed to adapt and change based on who was reading it. Some sections appeared only under specific light. Others required multiple people to read them simultaneously to become fully visible. Earth's preparation team worked in shifts. They discovered that the rules covered more than just physical competitions. There were mental challenges that involved solving problems while experiencing multiple sensory disruptions. There were strategic games that required competitors to think across different dimensional planes. Some challenges seemed to test not just skill, but creativity and adaptability. One particularly bizarre section detailed a competition that involved communicating complex ideas without using any verbal or written language. Another required participants to solve a problem while simultaneously experiencing the emotional state of their competitors. "This is insane," muttered Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a neuroscientist brought in to help understand the cognitive challenges. "They're not just testing physical abilities. They're testing the fundamental way species think and interact." The more they studied, the more humans realized this was more than a competition. It was a comprehensive evaluation of a species' potential. Sue Kim found the first major loophole on day 17. It was a tiny inconsistency in a subsection about team composition. Most species would have overlooked it, but humans were different. They saw rules as puzzles to be solved, not walls to be stopped by. "We can actually field a team that combines skills in ways no other species has thought of," she explained to the team. "The rulebook doesn't prohibit cross-training or unconventional team structures." The alien representatives watching the human preparation must have sensed something was different. Humans approached the rules with a mix of respect, curiosity, and a playful determination to understand every possible interpretation. When Jay asked Sue if they were ready, she just grinned. "We're going to make galactic history," she said, "and they have no idea what's coming." The first phase of preparation was complete. Humanity was learning the rules, and they were going to play to win. The training facility looked like nothing special from the outside. A large warehouse complex nestled in the mountains of Chill. It appeared ordinary, but inside, humanity was preparing for something extraordinary. Hyunli watched the first group of potential competitors go through their morning routine. He had been a Special Forces operative for 15 years before being recruited for this unique mission. His job was simple: prepare humans to compete in the most complex competition in galactic history. "Again," he shouted. The training room erupted into controlled chaos. Candidates moved through obstacle courses that defied normal human limitations. They practiced communication without words. They solved complex puzzles while being physically challenged. Some wore special suits that simulated different gravitational conditions. Others trained in rooms that changed temperature, light, and even atmospheric pressure every few minutes. The selection process was brutal. Thousands had applied. Only 20 would make the final team. Lin Wei, a former Olympic gymnast, twisted through a zero-gravity simulation that looked impossible. She moved like water, her body adapting to each new challenge faster than anyone else. Next to her, Park, a mathematical genius, solved complex spatial reasoning problems while balancing on a shifting platform. Hyun knew they weren't just training bodies, they were training minds. "The other species will expect us to be predictable," he told the team during a briefing. "We're going to be anything but predictable." Their training covered everything. Physical conditioning mixed with psychological preparation. They studied alien biology. They learned about different species' communication methods. They practiced improvisation and quick thinking. One day, the training involved a simulation where competitors had to solve a complex mathematical problem while being physically attacked by robotic opponents. Another day, they would spend hours learning to communicate using only facial expressions and body language. Dr. Elena Rodriguez oversaw the psychological training. She had designed tests that would push human adaptability to its absolute limits. "We're not just preparing for a competition," she explained. "We're showing the galaxy what humans can do." The alien observers watched. They had access to the training facility's data streams. What they saw confused them. Humans didn't train like any species they had encountered before. Most galactic competitors focused on perfecting specific skills. Humans trained to be completely unpredictable. They learned multiple skills instead of specializing. They practiced breaking rules in creative ways. They turned weaknesses into strengths. Hyun Lee had a unique approach to team building. He didn't just want the strongest or the smartest. He wanted people who could think differently, people who could adapt, people who saw challenges as opportunities. "Look at this group," he would say. "We have a former gymnast, a mathematician, a special forces operator, a computer programmer, and a professional dancer. In any other competition, this would make no sense. In our competition, it's our biggest strength." The team learned to work together in ways that seemed impossible. They developed communication methods that went beyond language. A slight hand movement, a quick glance, a barely perceptible nod. They became more than individual competitors. They became a single adaptive unit. As the final selection day approached, the mood was tense but excited. They knew they were preparing for something bigger than themselves. This wasn't just a competition. This was humanity's first real chance to show the galaxy who they were. Handley looked at the team and smiled. They were ready, or at least as ready as humans could ever be. The arena hung in space, a massive crystal-like structure that seemed to float between stars. Millions of alien species watched through holographic broadcasts. This was the first preliminary round of the Galactic Games, and humanity was about to make its debut. Park stood at the edge of the human team's starting zone. Around him, his teammates adjusted their lightweight competition suits. They looked calm. Too calm, some might say. The first challenge was a zero-gravity obstacle course that seemed impossible to navigate. Most species had specialized organs or technological enhancements to move in weightless environments. Humans had something different: creativity and pure determination. When the starting signal sounded, the alien commentators went quiet. Lin Wei moved first. She had been a gymnast, but this was beyond anything she had ever done before. The obstacle course twisted and turned, with barriers that shifted, disappeared, and reappeared without warning. Gravity wells created pockets of different gravitational forces. Obstacles moved with their own internal logic. Where other species might have approached this methodically, Lin attacked the course like it was a puzzle to be solved. She used the environment against itself. When a barrier appeared, she didn't try to go around it. She used its momentum to propel herself in an entirely unexpected direction. Her teammates watched her performance with quiet understanding. This wasn't just about following a path. This was about reimagining what a path could be. Park, the mathematical genius, calculated trajectory changes in real time. His body moved with a precision that looked almost like dancing. When a gravity well tried to pull him off course, he used its force to gain additional speed. The alien commentators began to whisper among themselves. This wasn't how any known species approached such a challenge. They're not using standard movement techniques, one Lumina observer noted. They're treating the entire course as a complex problem to be solved, not a path to be followed. Another preliminary round involved a communication challenge. Competitors had to convey complex scientific concepts without using any verbal or written language. Most species used advanced telepathic tools or complex translation devices. Humans used something simpler: improvisation and body language. When it was their turn, the human team created an elaborate mime performance that somehow explained quantum entanglement. They used their bodies, facial expressions, and a level of creative storytelling that left the judges confused and impressed. Are they performing? One alien judge asked another. I believe they are solving the challenge, came the response. The most surprising moment came during a strategic simulation. Competitors had to navigate a holographic battlefield that changed its rules every few minutes. Most species approached this with careful, calculated movements. The human team treated it like an elaborate game of improvised theater. When the simulation threw unexpected challenges, they didn't just adapt. They seemed to enjoy the complexity. They laughed. They made split-second decisions that made no sense, until they worked perfectly. By the end of the preliminary rounds, the human team had not just completed the challenges. They had redefined how challenges could be approached. The other species watched with a mix of confusion, respect, and a growing sense that humanity was something entirely different. J. Park looked at his team and smiled. They were just getting started. The combat challenge looked simple on the surface. Two competitors would face off in a close-quarters grappling match. Each species would demonstrate their physical capabilities and strategic thinking. For most of the competition, matches had been intense but relatively straightforward. Then came Min Park's turn. His opponent was a six-limbed creature from the Krell system. It looked like a cross between a praying mantis and a living metal sculpture. Its exoskeleton gleamed under the competition lights. Multiple eyes tracked Min's every movement with predatory precision. The match started normally. Both competitors moved in careful circles, studying each other. The Krell competitor had won multiple previous matches. Its reputation was fierce. Its body was designed for combat. Every limb was a potential weapon. Min looked almost small in comparison. He wore the standard human competition suit, which seemed paper-thin against the Krell's metallic exterior. When the match began, something unexpected happened. The Krell attacked first. Its multiple limbs moved with lightning speed, trying to immobilize Min. But Min was different. He didn't fight like the other competitors. He fought like someone who had learned survival was more important than rules. In a moment that would be replayed millions of times across the galaxy, Min did something no one expected. He bit his opponent. Not a gentle bite. Not a strategic bite. A full, hard bite directly into the Krell's exoskeleton. The arena went silent. The Krell competitor froze. Its multiple eyes blinked in confusion. This was not in any combat manual. This was not how sophisticated species fought. This was something primitive, something unexpected. Min didn't just bite. He bit with a purpose. He found a small weakness in the Krell's exoskeleton and applied precise pressure. The Krell's defensive systems momentarily short-circuited. In that single moment of surprise, Min flipped the much larger competitor. The match was over. Silence filled the arena. Then something remarkable happened. Min looked directly at the judges and asked a simple question. The rulebook doesn't explicitly forbid biting, right? The alien judges stared. Some looked shocked. Some looked impressed. Most looked completely confused. Sue Kim, watching from the team's preparation area, couldn't help but smile. This was exactly the kind of creative problem-solving she had hoped would happen. The rulebook had hundreds of pages of complex regulations, but nowhere did it say anything about biting. Hein Li, the team's strategic advisor, nodded quietly. This was more than just a match. This was a statement about human adaptability. The Lumina representatives huddled in their observation booth. Their translucent bodies shifted colors, which might have been their version of a heated discussion. "They're using the rules against us," one said. "They're understanding the rules better than we do," another responded. News of the match spread quickly. On every connected planet, in every viewing chamber, people watched the replay. The moment a human competitor had won a match by doing something so simple, so unexpected, that it broke every expectation. Min Park stood in the center of the arena. He looked calm. He looked like someone who had just solved a simple puzzle. The first phase of human participation in the Galactic Games had just become legendary. And they were just getting started. The Galactic Games Committee emergency meeting looked like something from a science fiction movie. Representatives from hundreds of alien species gathered in a massive circular chamber that seemed to float between dimensions. Holographic displays flickered with complex diagrams, rule texts, and replay footage of Min Park's controversial bite. Sue Kim watched from a special observation area. She wasn't allowed inside the committee chamber, but she had her ways of gathering information. "We cannot allow this," declared a serpentine species representative. Its multiple tongues flickered with agitation. "Humans are introducing chaos into a 1,000-year-old system." Another representative, a crystalline being that looked like a living diamond, responded differently. "They are using the rules as written. Is that not the point of the competition?" The debates went on for hours. Every time they tried to create a new rule to prevent human tactics, Sue could see the potential loopholes forming almost immediately. It was like watching someone try to catch water with a net. "We need to add a specific clause about biting," one committee member suggested. "But if we specify biting," another argued, "what about other forms of close contact interaction? Do we list every possible method of physical engagement?" Sue smiled. She was already mentally tracking the potential interpretations of each proposed rule change. The human team had become something of a legend overnight. Clips of Min Park's match played on every communication channel across the galaxy. Some species were horrified. Others were fascinated. A few seemed almost excited by the unexpected approach. Hyun Lee sat with the team, explaining their strategy. "We're not breaking rules," he told them. "We're exploring the space between the rules. We're showing that rules are just words until someone tests their limits." The committee worked for 3 standard galactic days. They created new regulations. They argued. They debated. Each new rule seemed to create more questions than answers. One proposed regulation ran to 247 pages. It attempted to define acceptable combat techniques with such precise language that it became impossible to understand. Sue found at least 17 major loopholes within an hour of its draft. "They're trying to cage creativity," Park observed, watching the committee's struggles. "But creativity can't be caged." The most interesting moment came when a senior committee member asked a simple question: "How do we define fair competition?" No one could answer immediately. Humans had done something remarkable. They weren't just competing. They were forcing the entire galactic sporting system to question its most basic assumptions. Some species wanted to disqualify the human team. Others argued that would go against the spirit of the Galactic Games. The competition had always been about adaptation, about showing the unique capabilities of different species. Sue Kim knew they were winning, even if they hadn't realized it yet. Each rule change made the regulations more complex. Each attempt to limit human creativity only showed how limited the other species' thinking had become. "They're creating rules," she whispered to herself, "and we're creating opportunities." The committee continued its debates. Holographic displays shifted. Languages translated and retranslated. Diplomatic tensions rose and fell like waves. Outside the chamber, the human team waited. They weren't worried. They were curious. Whatever happened next, humanity had already changed the Galactic Games forever. The team competitions began with a tension that could be felt across the entire galactic arena. Humans approached the challenge differently from any species that had come before them. Where others saw competition, they saw an opportunity to tell a story. Their first team challenge looked like a complex strategic simulation. Most species would approach it with cold calculation. The human team treated it like an elaborate game of improvised theater. Lin Wei started by doing something completely unexpected. During a moment that required intense concentration, she started to sing. Not a war song, not a strategic chant, just a simple, peaceful melody from her childhood. The other competitors froze. Her teammates understood immediately. The song wasn't just a song. It was a strategy. It created confusion. It broke the expected pattern of serious, intense competition. Park used mathematics like other people used conversation. He solved complex spatial problems while making jokes. When other teams tried to predict their movements, the humans would suddenly change everything. We're not just competing, Hanley had told them during preparation. We're telling a story that no one expects. In one challenge, they deliberately made mistakes. Not big mistakes. Small, careful mistakes that made the other teams question everything they knew about competitive strategy. When a telepathic species tried to read their thoughts, the human team members started thinking about the most random things possible. Recipes, childhood memories, complex mathematical equations, silly jokes. The telepathic competitors became completely confused. Another team challenge involved communicating complex ideas without using any standard language. Most species used advanced technology. Humans used something simpler: improvisation and creativity. They created elaborate mind performances. They used body language that seemed to change meaning with each movement. They laughed when other teams expected serious concentration. One alien observer noted something strange. They're not just competing, the observer said. They're playing. And play they did. During a mental challenge that required absolute focus, Min Park suddenly told a joke so absurd that it made the judges laugh. In a moment that required intense strategic thinking, Park started doing a ridiculous dance. These weren't just distractions. They were calculated moments of pure human unpredictability. The other species watched in confusion. How could a team treat a serious galactic competition like a performance? How could they be so relaxed when everything was at stake? Hanley understood something the other species didn't. Humans saw challenges differently. Where others saw walls, humans saw puzzles. Where others saw rules, humans saw suggestions. In one critical moment, the human team solved a complex three-dimensional spatial problem by treating it like a group dance. They moved together, their bodies telling a story that their minds were solving. The other competitors couldn't understand it. The judges couldn't explain it. But it worked. Psychological warfare for humans wasn't about aggression. It was about breaking expectations. It was about showing that competition could be creative. That serious challenges could be approached with joy and imagination. As the team competition continued, one thing became clear. Humans were changing the entire meaning of the Galactic Games. And they were just getting started. The final championship arena looked like it was built from living light. Floating platforms shifted and changed. Gravity wells appeared and disappeared. The entire space was a challenge that would test every possible skill a species could have. Humanity faced the ultimate test. Their opponents were a coalition of the most advanced species in the galaxy. The Zornak, a collective of silicon-based life forms, had won the championship for the last 5 consecutive cycles. The crystal mines, beams of pure energy, had technological capabilities beyond most species' understanding. The quantum collective brought computational power that could solve complex problems in milliseconds. And then there were the humans. Hanley looked at his team. They didn't look like a group of galactic champions. They looked like a group of friends about to play an interesting game. The challenge was complex beyond description. Competitors had to navigate a shifting landscape that changed based on mental and physical inputs. They needed to solve scientific problems while maintaining physical balance. They had to communicate across dimensional barriers. They needed to adapt faster than any computer could predict. Most species approached this with serious concentration. Humans approached it like an elaborate, exciting puzzle. Lin Wei moved first. Where others would calculate, she improvised. Her body became a language of movement. She didn't just solve problems. She danced through them. Day Park used mathematics like other people used breathing. Complex equations became simple stories in his mind. He saw patterns where others saw chaos. Min Park's earlier controversial bites seemed like a small moment compared to what was happening now. The team moved like a single organism. They weren't competing. They were performing. The alien commentators went silent. One moment, the human team would be solving a quantum entanglement problem. The next moment, they'd be telling jokes. Then they'd be creating an impromptu dance that somehow explained complex scientific concepts. The Zornak tried to predict their movements using advanced computational algorithms. Their systems crashed. The crystal minds attempted to read their collective thoughts. They found only creativity and joy. The quantum collective tried to analyze their strategy. They found something that defied traditional analysis. Pure human imagination. J. Park realized something in that moment. They weren't just competing. They were showing the galaxy something important about humanity. Adaptation wasn't just about technology. It was about spirit. It was about looking at a challenge and seeing an opportunity for creativity. The final challenge came down to a single moment, a problem that required simultaneous physical, mental, and emotional solutions. Most species would approach this with serious concentration. The human team started to laugh, and in that laughter, they'd found the solution. Their approach wasn't about being the strongest. It wasn't about being the smartest. It was about being uniquely, wonderfully human. When the final results came, something unexpected happened. The humans hadn't just won. They had redefined what winning meant. The arena filled with a sound that crossed species boundaries. It wasn't just cheering. It was a recognition of something special. Humanity had entered the Galactic Games as newcomers. They were leaving as something entirely different. They had shown the galaxy that competition could be an art form, that challenges could be met with joy, that creativity was the most powerful strategy of all. And they were just getting started. The return to Earth was not what anyone expected. Normally, teams that won major competitions got parades. They got speeches. They got medals. The human team got something different. They got understanding. News stations around the world showed the entire competition. People saw how the team had approached the Galactic Games, not as a serious, boring challenge, but as an opportunity to show who humans could be. J. Park stood at the press conference. Reporters from every country waited. Alien diplomats watched through holographic connections. He knew this moment was bigger than just a competition. "We didn't just win," he said simply. "We showed the galaxy who we are." The Lumina representatives had been changed by the experience. What they had seen was not just a competition. It was a window